Good evening. I'm going to talk about quantitative easing, what the central banks are trying to do and why it is not working. Not only why it is not working, but why it is not possible for it to work. Okay. In order to understand that, you'll need to grasp a few concepts. Okay. Oh, where's the bloody camera on this thing? In there is some money. Tiny amounts of money. In there is some folding money. In here is some other money. Now you may think it's a bit odd that I show you those when I'm talking about money. In here is some more money. Cards, credit cards, bank cards, all sorts of cards. Money exists in more forms than just simply this, or folding, although my preference, and probably everyone else's at the moment, will be for folding. Money exists in more forms than just the stuff you can hold in your hand. There are numbers. Those numbers reside in electronic accounts. Those accounts reside in banks. Those banks trade those numbers on the international credit and debt markets. Now, at the moment, what is happening is kind of as suggested. People don't know the scale of what is going on. They don't know the scale of the problem. This is not like the crash we had in the 1930s. This is not like the crash we had in 87. This is not like the crash we had in 2008. The crash in 2008, in essence, was a relatively small thing because all it was a decision between who should benefit from the need for a readjustment of capital. Should the people who had speculated in property be sent down the Swanee and their property values fall, or should we go out and bail out the banks, i.e. the people who lent them the money, and print money in order to help the banks out? We decided back then to print the money to help the banks out, and that allowed the banks to readjust their own credit market. Now what's happening at the moment isn't that. What's happening is no one knows the extent of the damage that can or will be done to companies, countries, nations or whatever by this virus. If the figures that the Chinese came out with are true, you're looking at mortality rates of 1% per infected person. And if the modelling of the government is correct, they're expecting 80% of the people to become infected. So of the 80% that become infected, 1% in this scenario would die. That's a lot of people. In the UK, that's up there towards the 500,000 mark of people potentially, if they can't contain it over whatever the run of this illness is. Across the world, that's a big number. It's a lot of people. And obviously, so the measures that everyone are taking to control it are quite important. The financial contagion is a very different thing, because what's happened now is that the markets are saying, oh, fuck, what are we doing owning shares in a company that cannot make any money? In fact, owning shares in a company that any moment now, if it doesn't lay its staff off immediately, will be bankrupt. So it's understandable why the stock market has come down. In fact, it's understandable why the stock market hasn't even come down anywhere near far enough yet. So what's happened is people are saying, I own all these shares. I have no idea what the company I'm investing in is going to be doing in a month's time, but more than that, I haven't got any idea what it's going to be doing next week. So it's a very, very critical place we're in, and investors are saying, right, once we've finished with all the speculators selling it short, we've now kind of had everyone in the world throwing the sink at it, and still we have the same problem of what the hell is the market going to do, and what the hell are these shares worth in these companies that no longer, in essence, in a lot of cases don't exist. You know, like I was talking earlier about your airline companies or whatever. I'm seeing here people's businesses just evaporating. Okay. All of those people have all sorts of credit financial problems, of which I've tried to talk about. Let's not start talking to things. I'll be talking to houseplants next if I start using that business term. Talk about the problems that they've got. These guys need instant suspension of debt because they haven't got the money, and that will be the problem. Now, the debt markets and the idea of money, as I was saying earlier about, you know, what is money or whatever. Money, for most of us, is one of two things. It's either stuff that we've got in our hands. It's either this folding, or it's some form of debt or savings or whatever. So either we've got credit card debts or we've got loans or whatever. Who owns those loans? What is that money? And what is its function in this particular market? Well, what's happening at the moment is this. Is that government are trying not to shit themselves in public. Some have been doing it better than others, and I'm not going to cite examples because you can see some people are able to contain themselves in a crisis, and some people are not. But the governments are trying not to be visually seen to be shitting themselves, because that will spread even more fear. They're taking advice from people who are saying, well, the only thing we can do is get into the markets and, in essence, try and lend money to companies. Lend to companies a degree of credit guarantee so that their people that they've borrowed the money from feel safe enough not to try and take the money back. Now, this is where fundamentally I think I disagree with what we're trying to do. It is not possible to find that money, right? It is not possible for the government to intervene in the markets to create that kind of money. So what they're doing is saying, well, we'll fiscally ease. We will go into the market and buy our own bonds in order to bring the price of bonds down. No. Bring the price of credit down? No. Just exactly what do they think they're actually trying to do? What way do they think they're going to affect people's thinking? It's kind of like a drowning man kind of says, well, what I'm going to do is I'm going to hold my breath for 4 minutes to prove that I can hold my breath for 4 minutes. Well, he can't hold his breath for 4 minutes, and it's just laughable watching him drown. This is what the banks, the central banks, are doing. They're coming into the market and trying to do something that can't be done. The more they try and underwrite bad debt with the promise of even more bad debt, people come out of the debt markets and they hold just cash. The moment they start doing that, they're going to say, well, fuck, this is serious. I need my cash back from these companies. So do not allow this company to do whatever. Give us our money back. Give us our money back. Give us our money back. Remember, I was saying earlier, I don't like that thing because it makes it look a bit too like I'm portraying some old money lending miser. I'm not doing that. What I'm saying is this structurally is not a fixable position we're in here. You cannot fix it by moving the money around. You certainly cannot fix it by what the governments are doing, which is just offering a guarantee that is absolutely fucking worthless. Fucking worthless. Now, we've seen governments do this back in the Weimar Republic and whatever, writing money, just deciding to print money. What the governments of the world need to do is this. They need to say, this is a global temporary emergency. We are not going to allow people to lend money with interest. We are going, for the period of this emergency, to make a different rule. We're going to say, your money is already lent to someone, your money is already invested. We're trying our best to protect your interests. But in order for us to do that, we've got to stop the people with the money acting selfishly. We've got to say, if we're all going to lose our shirts, those shirts are not going to go to you. Those shirts are going to stay on our back, and we'll all stand together, bring back calm, and work to find a solution. That solution cannot be made by allowing the capital markets to work the way that they normally do. Because as we're seeing, as I said, what you'll get is stock prices going down, the cost of borrowing going through the roof, the cost of commodities going up. And you're going to have this really weird scenario, which we've never seen before, which is big assets going down, small stuff going up. Now, I'll try and explain that by what's been hitting my email just as a normal person. On my email, I'm getting floods of, you can buy this house, this lovely house that was that, for that. There's no chain, you can get it now. In fact, you can probably have it for that. So a really big asset is coming down very quickly. You could buy a whole company this week that was up there for down there. Next week, it'll be down there. You won't even fucking see where it is, okay? That's what happens when assets dissolve, okay? At the bottom of the market, i.e. you and I and the Joe Schmo public holding the folding in, they go, I'd like to buy a pound of potatoes. Start of the week, a pound of potatoes might have cost you 50, 60, 70p. Next week, they may cost you £2. The week after, they may cost you £6. And the reason why is because although we have these arguments about food security and whatever, what is happening overall is when you shut the economy down, all the people that could go off and plant and harvest things can't move around Europe, can't move around the States. All the people that people despise and loathe and try and get out of their countries all day, these filthy migrants who do all the work for us, they actually can't do all the work for us. And surprise, surprise, if they can't do all the work for us, no one can do the fucking work for us, and there isn't the product. So what is going to happen is what I said in the commodity markets, that there will be a constant demand for food, but there won't be as much food produced because you can't harvest it. So you get speculators go into the market, what costs £2 this week, costs £4 next week, costs however many pounds that is there, new fangled plastic money. So what we have is, and this, watch this, is assets, right, going down, prices going up. Now, how do you think that's happening? What is going on with money that makes that happen? Okay, this one, these assets are this kind of money plus expectation. So a stock price is how much the company can earn plus a multiple of what we think that company can earn. Well, if that company went from up there because we thought it was good for 5 years solid earnings and it's now making no money, it is not worth anything. All the multiples come out. At the moment, the markets are kind of holding here because the central banks are going, here's money, here's money, here's money, here's money. But that money does not go to these people. That money does not go into those companies. It can't go into those companies. All it does is goes into the hand of lenders. It says, oh, the lender is in trouble. It's not the fucking company that's in trouble as far as this policy is concerned. It's the lender. So what happens is the people with money say, give us, the people with money, more money, and we won't make this a problem. This is a national emergency. This is a global emergency. So what you need to do is suspend that process, because it is not possible to create that money. As we're watching on the markets, the bond markets are going fucking ballistic. That is where I've said this will end up next. You're going to end up in this situation where you have a kind of slump and a credit slide and prices going through the roof. Unimaginable economic stuff that is in no one's economic model. It sure as hell isn't in the Bank of England's model. It sure as hell isn't in the stress testing model that they use to calculate whether banks are liquid or whether they can stand or whatever. Then it's not in their model, because no one thinks that this could have happened. No one a month ago thought that this could be where we're at. So what needs to happen is you've got to bring back stability into the market. That means, and I'm going to say this again, at the sound of sounding like someone who's banging on the same old bloody drum, you have got to shut the stock market. The stock market will only continue to go down because I cannot value that company. You can't even see, when you look down at it, where the hell is the value of that company. I've just been listening to the government saying, stand by your men, we're going to stand by you. This isn't some sort of like country and western song we're going on about here. This is absolute business reality. If companies don't get rid of their staff immediately, the companies will not be there. Okay? So what needs to happen is the government needs to understand that this is a temporary emergency. So it needs to suspend the stock market. It also needs to suspend the paying of debt, the running up of the need to pay back capital, the right to evict, the right to foreclose. If it needs to suspend it for a week, suspend it for a week. If it needs to suspend it for 2 weeks, 2 weeks. As looks likely it will need to suspend it for 3 or 4 months, suspend it for 3 or 4 months. What would you rather, that people foregoed interest for 3 or 4 months, or we just destroyed everything? We kicked everyone out of their houses in a time where they can't mix with each other, saying, right, well, you haven't paid the rent, you're out. Your business is shut because you haven't paid the rent. You haven't repaid that business loan on the print machinery you bought last year. We need to come around and foreclose and take that back. You see the logic of what I'm trying to say? It is just ludicrous. By allowing debts and interest still to exist, we perpetuate a cycle that can only drive itself into itself. Okay, so we suspend for the period of the emergency the payment of interest, the charging, the need to pay back capital. We don't get the government to say, you know what, we'll do that, because why the fuck should the government do it? It is the lender of the capital who they charge the risk premium when they lend the money. Why the fuck should that be guaranteed by the government? That's like saying, when the shit hits the fan, all those people with money will guarantee they don't lose money. All those people without money, you can fuck off and sail down the Swanee, carrying your kids and your floating dead granny with you. This is not how we need to do it. We need to suspend the markets. We need to suspend the futures markets in commodities. We need to stop people being allowed to buy and create corners. Now, at the moment, people think, well, you're just talking guff here, Andy. I said, I'm not. You've only got to go into the shops and see what's happening. Remember what I said about your price of potatoes? You know, I went in the shop yesterday to get some drugs for my mum, and I was watching someone trying to buy some something like some sort of Panadol for kids, Calpol. Trying to buy Calpol, and it had gone up, something like twice the price or something or other. They said, well, how can Calpol go up twice the price? How it can go up is because people need it, and people selling it go, bit of the old wonga in there. If you allow people with this amount of dosh, but times a million, floating around, standing on the edge of the global markets going, oh, what should we bet on next? I'll tell you what we'll do. We'll call ourselves hedge fund managers. That will mean we're not actually just laundering loads of money into the market and gambling at a time of fucking global crisis. We need to shut the futures commodity markets before we get absolute pandemonium. Okay. Now, I wonder if I've actually explained what money is in the middle of that. I don't know. Do I need to go back and say a little bit more of this? Matt, did you find that helpful? If not, there's probably no one who can help you. Now, I think I'll leave it there, because if I say much more, it just sounds illogical and just like ranting. But I am just trying to point out something to you. It is possible for assets to go whew, whilst commodity prices go whew, right? It's possible for bonds to absolutely shit themselves, because people go, actually, maybe the government isn't the last guarantee of value. Maybe when the government's saying, I can do this, 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 they can't. Maybe the government should stop trying to bail out the investor and just call a halt to things for a few weeks. That way, order can be reinstalled, right? 3 or 4 months down the line, we'll get a picture of what's going on here. How bad we let it be is a matter of how far we let our governments not act, or act to save the wrong people. Now, we're having so much trouble in the UK just getting the government to say we'll suspend rent for people who've got no money. I just don't understand why we're even thinking about that. Why are we going, you can't be evicted during this period, but you can run up the debt. Now, let's assume that's a week. There's an old adage that says this in the rental market. If you can't afford 1 week's rent, you can't afford 2. If we say, well, assume it takes a month. So someone who can't afford 1 week's money can't afford a month's money. But they can run up the debt and they won't be allowed to be evicted for it. By the government's measure, you've got to expect this to take 4 months. So someone who can't afford 1 week now will somehow or other find some magical debt thing for 4 months. Whatever. What if it takes longer? Why don't we just do the straightforward thing I'm saying? Just suspend rent, suspend interest, suspend speculation.